Good morning. How is everybody doing today? Yeah, this is a lot of eyes staring at us. So do me a favor, wave at us real fast. How are y'all? We're good. Christina, how are you doing?
I'm good.
All right, awesome. We're glad that you're here. So let me introduce Christina. Christina Hayes is a 5th grade math teacher from the Aspire Academy in Grapevine, Colleyville ISD. And she was awarded Teacher of the Year this year. And we're so excited that her principal sent back some information about her, and we reached out to her immediately and said, man, we would love to have a podcast to hear from teachers. One of the things that we've heard the most this year is that teachers want to hear from teachers. And so that's what we're bringing to you. We're bringing a teacher that's in it, has been walking the same path with you. We've got some great questions for her, and we're super excited that she is here. She does teach at the, is it Highly Gifted? So tell us a little bit about where you teach at.
Yeah, so I teach at an elementary school called Glen Hope Elementary. It is K-5. They have traditional K-5 classrooms, but about 10 years ago, our district decided to start a Highly Gifted Academy, and they house it within our school, so that is called the Aspire Academy, and I teach 5th grade in that program. All of my students are highly gifted. I took that challenge on because I knew it was going to be a challenge and I would learn a lot, and my goodness, those kids sure do keep me on my feet.
So we're going to kick off with a little bit of an icebreaker, okay? And so this is Would You Rather. So I want you just to, the first thought that comes to your mind, I just want you to respond to that, okay? You don't have to tell me all the details, why, just give me what you're thinking. Okay. Ready? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mountains or beach?
Mountains.
Cats or dogs?
Both.
Okay. Winter or summer?
Summer.
Pool or lake?
Pool.
Pool. Okay. Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix.
Netflix. Okay. And then here's another one for you. Pizza or pie?
Pizza.
Good answer, because that's what we have for lunch for you. But if you would have said pie, that's okay too, because we also have that for y'all as y'all leave today. Awesome. So we have pizza. You was not going to say a wrong answer on that. Okay, so looking back, so you've been teaching for 13 years now.
Yes.
So looking back to that very, very first year of teaching, tell me, what is one thing that you would do differently?
Gosh, that first year, I was dead set on that control piece. And in my brain, as a first year teacher, I felt that control meant that you had good classroom management. I'm a very organized person. I work off lists. And so that control made me feel more confident and ready. But because of that overwhelming sense of control in my classroom, my relationships with students suffered, my classroom management actually suffered. And it wasn't until I began to let go of that control in the right kind of ways that I saw my students blossom. I saw my relationships with kids blossom. Something I started to develop were 2 words, and I still use them today. I say to myself, why not? So for example, if a kid comes up to me and they say, Ms. Hayes, I know that you told us we can do this and this and this to show mastery, but could I try this? In the beginning, my initial reaction was no. And I still sometimes catch myself telling kids no, and then they walk away and I think to myself, but why not? Is there a reason? And if there's a good reason, then it can be no. But quite often, there is not a good reason. So I end up calling them back and I'm like, you know what, go for it. I trust you. Sometimes I might have them write out their specific ideas so I can see it on paper, we can agree upon it, but those words really help me and help me understand that, I can let go of the control in the right ways, and that my classroom is going to blossom because of it.
It really showcases the power of the partnership that we have with students. And so I love that. So what kind of impact do you think that would make on students? Going back to that year, very first year, if you would have shifted and went more from the why not phrase, what impact do you think that would have had on the students? And how has it impacted students now that is how you do things in your classroom?
Yeah, so that first year I was teaching kindergarten, which is a whole different kind of realm. And so they tend to, when they are upset, their reactions are typically physical. They'll throw themselves on the floor, they'll cry because they don't know how to express themselves. And so my control actually had escalated those situations. And I think that the kids would have reacted more calmly when they were upset. I think that they would have built that relationship with me a lot sooner. And we got there eventually, but it would have made that impact a lot sooner. And then when we would have been able to not only continue with the relationship, but really get into the academics. But sometimes kids can't get there with the academics if they don't trust you and they don't feel comfortable.
Creating that safe environment, that really what that math community looks like.
Yes.
It feels like in your classroom. I remember my first year teaching very similar to you. I thought that the classroom had to be quiet and organized and everything had to be perfect on their desk, because I was like, if my administrator walks in or another teacher walks in, especially that's been teaching a while, and it's not put together, they're gonna think that I don't have a clue what I'm doing. And so I tried so hard to be this perfect, and then that lasted about 2 weeks. Because then I realized, this is not as much fun as I thought this was gonna be. So I misunderstood something. And so I began to really challenge myself to figure out what it was that I wanted that class to look like and sound like. And so I had the opportunity to go one of those teachers that I've been involved, and I used her as a mentor. And what I realized is that was totally not what was supposed to be going on. I just thought that everything had to look nice and controlled. And when I let that go, much like you, it shifted just the joy, not only in myself as a teacher, but the joy that my students were coming in, and they loved being at school because we all just really enjoyed that time together. So I'm glad that I'm not the only person that had that kind of a similar experience.
Yes.
So now let's fast forward to where we are now. Last few years, you talked a lot about how you've shifted in the control, and you're beginning to talk about why not, and really allowing students to bring that voice to the classroom. Are there some other classroom practices that you've grown in the last few years that have really transformed your classroom as well?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I try to ensure in my kids is that failure is okay, and the only way to grow is that struggle and that failure. So sometimes I fail in front of them, not on purpose, because it just happens, but sometimes I make it intentional and I do it on purpose because I am not a perfect person. Adults and teachers shouldn't be seen that way, and I want kids to understand that there is no shame. Especially with math, I teach math and science both, and I have kids who are completely different kids in my math classroom than my science, and it's all due to confidence. And so me, getting a calculation wrong shows them that it's okay that they make that mistake, and that failure really shows them that I am human, that they can be human, and then, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. What did that cause in the long run, right? We fixed it and we moved on. Something else that I heavily rely on is relationship. I have found that to be the number one in the success of my students academically. And if you don't build that off from the beginning, then you're going to kind of try to spend the entire year getting them where you want them to be. I believe the key to relationship is showing kids that you care about them, that they can trust you by giving them a voice. And so I try to give them a voice in all things. I give them a voice in, the way our classroom looks. I give them a voice in the music, the kind of music that we hear. And I give them a voice in what I need to do as an educator to improve myself. So at the end of every unit, I send out a survey. They tell me what they liked. They tell me what they didn't like. They rate me on things like how fair I am, how helpful I am. And then I've always left kind of something at the end that says, I wish Ms. Hayes knew. And I left it very open-ended because some kids will say things that are academic, but some kids will say things that you never saw coming. I've had kids tell me that there's things going on at home that are really impacting their day. And so that I know, and they can talk to me, I can reach out to the counselor. Mom and dad are fighting a lot. I had a student this year tell me that his sister was having a lot of difficulties and she was getting all of the attention in not a good way. And he used those specific words. And so we kind of talked together and made an action plans for how he could communicate at home with his family. And sometimes kids are honest. They'll say, last week when my mom emailed you and said that I was sick, we really went to the state fair. They trust me. They know that I'm not going to be upset if they tell me I need to improve on something, and they trust me to just lay their feelings out. And the important thing about asking voice is to show kids that you're actually going to use it. So then when I read those surveys, if there's anything glaring as a whole, I'll make sure to address that with the group as a whole. But then if there's kids that have said they don't feel like I'm fair or helpful, and it's just that one kid or a few, I might call them up and say, what can I do for you? How can I improve it? So me acting on that voice shows them that I do care and they can trust me.
So I love how you develop relationships with your students. And I love that you use errors as gifts, right? Especially knowing that you work, that your audience of students are gifted. And we know that sometimes making errors or mistakes is something that they have to work through. So I think that that's a really great way to build that relationship and help them to see that errors are gifts and mistakes are opportunities to learn. And really meeting them where they are, right? So how do you feel that voice in those relationships increases student discourse in mathematics? So what does your math classroom sound like when they get into the content? How do those things impact what that discourse sounds like?
Yeah, so I think that we do regular circle ups, so we do classroom meetings, and in that it's another way to give students voice, but we become really comfortable with each other, and then we become kind of each other's cheerleaders. So when I say, okay, when I'm at my teacher table, I'm working with a small group, and you're working with your group, discussion is required. I want to hear you talking. I want to hear you talking about the right things. Obviously, no one's perfect. I understand if you get off track and talk about what you did over the weekend, but make sure you try to get back on track. And our district this past year has really made a focus on reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And so a protocol that I've adopted just in the last year is called View, Talk, Read, Talk, Solve. So what I'll have kids do, and I have the protocol kind of on the top of the paper, but the first thing they do is work with a partner or a trio, and they just view the problem without talking at all. And then they talk to each other about what they notice. And then they read the problem out loud to each other. And then they talk about how they think they should solve it and why, and then they solve it. And you have kids who are struggling. Yes, even highly gifted kids struggle in math. That is a common misconception that they're supposed to be good at everything. And so it allows them, those that are a little bit unsure, to have that communication and to see other points of view, and to have kids kind of reinforce topics that they might be a little shaky on. And we also do math warm-ups, and I encourage kids to come up and share. And so, I don't force them to come and share, but I'll set little goals. I'll say, okay, well, you don't want to share, but like, it's my goal by this date that you come up and you talk about how you solved something. And the kids make a big deal to cheer each other on, and we make a big deal of, hey, you got that wrong, but let's learn from it. And I think that just building that kind of relationship and that family, we are a family, really helps in that mathematical discourse.
Absolutely. So I appreciate you walking us through what that looks like for you, from the beginning of year one to where you are now, and just how you've shifted in your teaching practices, and you've been able to continue to grow and challenge yourself. You mentioned you started at kindergarten, now you're teaching 5th grade, and I know we've talked a little bit about, you've taught some other grades as well. And so I think that that's what us as teachers, we love to grow. We love to learn, we love to challenge ourselves, and we love to be around our students, regardless if they're 5 or they're about to graduate and go into college. And so thank you very, very much for sharing some of those relationships and voice and the importance of what that looks like, because you mentioned earlier, the academics is there, the content is there, but it's the relationships. How did the students feel when they left my classroom today? Did they feel seen? They feel heard? They feel valued? And did they feel loved? And if I can say yes to those things, then I can begin to reach them with content, and especially when the content gets to be a little bit of a challenge for them. And so thank you very much. So we started with a would you rather on some like non-mathy things, but we got to wrap up a little bit, right? I want to kind of pick your brains just a smidgen on what that looks like. So let me find my little handy dandy list because I lost it. That's okay. You ready? Okay. Physical manipulatives or online manipulatives?
Both.
She's gonna like your session.
Student voice, you let them choose what they prefer.
Okay. So she said both. All right. Okay. So we want 2-dimensional shapes or 3-dimensional shapes?
I like 3D. I'm very kinesthetic. Put my hands on it.
Okay. Do you like which one doesn't belong or notice and wonder?
Which one doesn't belong?
And last one, are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. quadrilateral, or square? That was really a trick question. Okay, anyway, so that's all that we have for you. Christina, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast recording. We always end our recording with an R11 Math Now challenge. So I'm going to let her tell you what that challenge is for today. So I want you to listen up closely because she has a really good one for you.
Okay, so voice is my thing, and so what I'd like you guys to do is by the end of the day, I want you to have at least 2 new ways that you can implement voice in your classroom next year that's different than what you've done before.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you very much. We hope you have a great day.